Good afternoon, and how are you doing? Today is Thursday, I think. Yeah. Sorry, I'm retired. And it's a lovely day, I think. Well, sort of. It's overcast. Normal. It is Vancouver, sort of. Anyways, I'm going to read to you chapter 3 of the Bashful Courtesan. And as you remember, this is a two-way story, kind of like a two-way street. And I have a list. Let me see who's on my list. Oh, yes. Today, if I had somebody that I could choose to be reading it, I would have JOHN LITHGOW. I know. We all remember him from Third Rock from the Sun and all that. And I like, but my God, that man's got a voice. He can read quite nicely. And I wouldn't mind it if he just sat in front of his computer, put on the, well, if he's got a Mac, put on the photo booth app and just like read. Straight cold reading. That's what I have to do. And then I could just listen. I just love to listen to somebody who knows how to read properly. It's like, you sit there and you listen to those things, like, when they're reading those letters. I can't remember what it is. I have it somewhere around. They just sit there and they stand there and they read those letters. Olivia Colman, I love her. Benjamin Cumberbatch, or Benedict Cumberbatch, Hiddleston. They all stand up there and they read these letters and they're just like amazing. That's what I want for this, but I think I need a few more than just like, the couple of subscribers that I have. I need what am I looking at? I need somebody to spread the word. I mean, nobody listens to me. I've been here almost 2 years. I've only got 470 some odd people. I have 478 today. That's what I do. I looked at it. That's what I have. 478 people. And now I've got this booktube. This is going on booktube, and I have 88 people on this. The 478 is on my Substack. Don't forget, that's where this is going to. I'll be linking this up to my Substack, and we'll see how that all goes. And I'm going to kind of look at the camera. It's really difficult because, my picture's over here. My picture's over here. My writing's over here. And the camera's over there. And I keep screwing it up. Sorry. I'm not supposed to swear. I swear like a trooper. Like, bad. But, like, hey, that might come out eventually. Anyways, I'm going to read this. I'm going to read it right now. The Bashful Courtesan. Chapter 3. Vienna, 1921. It took years for Aristide Baltazzi to accept how his once-upon-a-time life had come to such an abrupt end. It had come with the waning of the last century, a lifetime ago now, or so it seemed, he thought, and he had to forgive himself for thinking things couldn't get any worse, because he was wrong. He spat and wondered if it was in memory of those days or just habit. He found himself wondering if that world, and everything he remembered about it, was more of a curse. He told himself they were, digging the small hand shovel into the dirt. It wasn't that he was a dreamer. Life hadn't taught him to give up on his dreams, not yet. But he'd grown up privileged and wanting for little in his youth. And when a man loses everything through no fault of his own, it's bound to take a toll on him. He remembered his father telling him that, warning him in that strange way, but still, it had taken the Great War and its aftermath to show him to what depths a man could sink. Now, sitting on his knees and weeding the same dry patch of garden he'd been tending to since the first days of the Great War, he found it ironic how what was once a hobby had now evolved into his only means of survival. The garden wasn't as large as it should have been, and for that he was sorry. Obviously, he hadn't thought that this was what the future held for him. All the same, I should have made it larger, he told himself. It was not for his sake, or for those few who remained with him through the harsh years of the Great War, but for those who came after, wandering into the valley in a desperate search for food. During the Great War, Schloss Demmenhoft was pressed into service as a medical hospice for wounded officers and dying gentlemen. There'd been so many of them, he thought. Too many, he remembered, and most of them did die. What their wounds didn't do to them, the Spanish flu finished. The Schloss, once upon a time, had belonged to one of the princes Esterhazy, and sat nestled in the central Steiermark region of what was also the once upon a time Empire of Austria-Hungary. With wide, extensive lands and now empty stables, Schloss Demmenhorst stood high on the promontory, overlooking the endless sweep of the Foss Valley. Standing in the shadows of the Hochkoning, an imposing mountain huddled under a shroud of year-round snow, Baltazzi had taken to the coach-house over the course of the last season, looking after himself and thinking, and not without a small hint of pride, how he'd risen to the occasion. And because his youth had once been a life of privilege, he supposed it was guilt that made him look after every starving soldier that stumbled into the valley, as if it were his duty as a penitent landowner to feed and house those who came. He told himself he knew what it meant to suffer. He told himself he knew what it meant to suffer. Having fallen into what he considered the depths of despair and seeing how far not just the country but his family had plummeted, he told himself that he understood. In that life, in that former once-upon-a-time existence that was his past, his family had wielded great political power and held vast financial riches. The family had lived in what could only be described as gilded opulence. He could see that now. He could not see it then. The Schloss once employed 40 servants who attended to the needs of the family. Those years were behind him now, not just lost or forgotten, but impractical and unattainable in what the people were now calling a new day and age. It seemed people were always calling every geopolitical storm a new day and age, he thought. He'd learned a long time ago there'd be no happily ever after for him. All of that privileged past had come to a bitter end, crashing down around him the morning the Crown Prince shot himself and his mistress at Meierling. The problem was that the prince's mistress had been his niece, and as a result, the entire family found itself shunned from Viennese society. His wife and 3 daughters had become social outcasts overnight, pariahs, undesirables, persona non grata. The marriages he somehow managed to arrange for his daughters were made in moments of desperation, while the money needed to cover up the affair and consequent scandal had come from his father, a banker for the Sultan of Turkey. The brunt of the scandal, the embarrassment, the ridicule, the gossip concerning his own daughters and their questionable virtue had come to rest on his shoulders. Baltazzi realized a long time ago that it was in his own best interest to forget about the past. The black and silver liveried servants that once stood at the bottom of the stairs announcing dinner on the giant gong, those same servants slowly serving soup from silver tureens, were gone. If scandal and war hadn't taken the servants away, the prospects of a bleak future had made it certain. He sat up, stretching his back and feeling the sun beat down on his thin shoulders, looking up at the Hochkonig and the distant blue-green tint of trees leading up to the snow-capped peak. In the fall, those same trees would be a palette of colors, and in the winter, lost under a crush of snow. Pulling a small square of linen from his back pocket to wipe his brow and thinning hair, he patted his neck, looking up at the soft blue sky where larks circled overhead. The soaring silhouette of the birds dancing among the wispy clouds looked as if they'd been painted overhead, a sharp reminder of a different time when the trees were full of bird song, and he rode through the woods at a mad gallop. And where are my horses now? He wondered, bending down to his task once again. They took his horses and laughed at him as they did, knowing he was in no position to stand up to an imperial decree. And why would he asked himself. While suffering through the humiliation of scandal, Baltazzi had continued with the family's business of raising horses. He knew there was no refusing an emperor's decree to give up his stables during times of war. Did they honestly think he'd refuse? Is that why they laughed? He was just as much a patriot as the next man, and he told them, and in those exact words. His family had supplied the empire, as well as the emperor personally, with horses dating from before the Austro-Prussian War. He sometimes wished he'd left for England with his sister and his brother, but that had been so long ago. He could understand his sister's leaving Vienna. It was her daughter who'd been killed by the crown prince, after all. But his brother? As the uncle and the only remaining relative, it fell on Baltazzi to survive the scandal. And while it may have been the most difficult thing he'd ever done in his life, he told himself he had to stay for the sake of his 3 daughters. He looked at the small plot where he'd buried his wife and 2 of his daughters just last week, as well as his grandchildren, what amounted to his entire family, and all he could do was to think himself a failure for not having had the strength to bury them in the family cemetery. It was the flu that had done it to him. That was what he told himself. He wanted to believe it, but it was an excuse, he told himself. Maybe something he tried convincing himself was the truth, but an excuse all the same. And where is Dagmar, he asked himself. She left 3 years ago with her revolutionary lover and had yet to return. He had no idea if she was even alive. There had been rumors and stories about riots in the cities, communist uprisings and political upheavals. There had been shootings and executions, hangings in the streets. But there was little to hear anymore, and he supposed perhaps it was for the best, better for everyone. He liked to think that she had somehow escaped the country, and for whatever reason had simply refused to send word. It's better than the alternative, he thought, looking at the graves once again. A stranger came out of the woods to the south, beyond the little rise where the graves lay. His figure appeared small in the distance, stooped, walking with the aid of a heavy staff that was thick and bulbous and obviously served as a weapon. As he approached, Baltazzi thought the man had seen better days. A veteran, he told himself, and forced himself to stand. The man will undoubtedly be hungry, and he walked into the coach-house to stoke the fire and bring the pot of soup to boil. A twisted rag that might have been a kerchief was wrapped around the man's head, serving as an eye patch. A dark pink scar underneath the rag ended in a long paisley curl that was lost in the mad growth of beard. His hair was long, unruly, and unkempt, and he tied it behind his head with a knotted leather strap. As the man approached, Baltazzi could see 3 of the fingers on his left hand were missing, just leaving the thumb and pinky. And even though there was a limp in the man's step, he held himself tall and erect. I know the kind, Baltazzi thought. Aristo. Where are you coming from, friend? Friend? Do you not know me? Well, I can understand if you don't, considering the way I look. Then you'll have to forgive me for not knowing you. I've come from my wife and son. My God, Novak! Where did you lose your eye? Baltazzi asked, sitting back in a wicker chair and lighting his pipe. They were in the coach-house, seated in the small kitchen with a large wood stove set firmly in the corner, the walls decorated with tiles made of Delft blue. There was a sink with a hand pump and a countertop that ran the length of the room. A loaf of bread sat on a cutting board. France, Novak said, slurping at a bowl of soup and looking grateful. He broke off a piece of the home-baked bread with the clawed fingers of his left hand and stuffed it into his mouth. Good bread. I like that there's no sawdust in it. That's what they put in bread these days. Makes it go farther, or so they say. Doesn't do much for the taste. No, I don't imagine it would. The words came out quick, sounded emotionless, and Novak lifted his head, looking at Baltazzi with an intensity that seemed to bore through him. That seems more like the man I remember, Baltazzi thought. He ate the rest of his food without uttering another word, and Baltazzi wondered if it was worth the effort trying to comfort the man with his losses. It was the flu, he said at last, looking out at the garden and the graves beyond. It was the reason he'd buried them there, he reminded himself, so that he could look at the graves as a reminder of everything he'd lost. The flu? Seems that's what everyone's dying of these days, isn't it? More people are dying of the flu than did in the war, they say. Who says that? This new League of Nations everyone seems so intent on bringing about. What have you heard about this league? Me? They're a bunch of namby-pamby bureaucrats trying to make something out of nothing, as far as I can tell. They're trying to follow up on the Paris talks to the letter, making new countries out of what used to be the largest empire in Europe. It's bold to think that law can civilize the conduct of war, don't you think? But do we really care? I mean, do you, sincerely? I find it hard to believe if you do. What about the emperor? He's only trying to hold on to what's left. Well, that's gone now then, isn't it? What do you mean? The old emperor is gone, and with him the whole empire. Did he really think his, I don't even know what he was, grandson? Nephew? Well, grandnephew. Doesn't matter now, does it? He's the last of them, Karl or Charles or whatever name they gave him. The last emperor of Austria, the last king of Hungary, the last and final king of Croatia, the last king of Bohemia, the last of everything, if you ask me. Did he really think he could hold all that together? He's a bigger fool than he's made out to be if he did. And why do you say that? He's still the Emperor of Austria, Baltazzi added, standing up and taking Novak's bowl. He ladled more soup into it and tore off another piece of bread, looking out of the window at the tiny crosses before placing the bowl on the table in front of the man. Obviously you haven't heard, sitting out here all alone. Heard what? Baltazzi asked, sitting down and once again picking up his pipe. He's been sent into exile. Exile? Some island off the coast of Portugal. Can they do that? Sure they can. This is a nationalist state now, a republic. It's no longer an empire. We have a parliament as well as a president. They voted him out, so he's gone. Him, his wife, you mean the empress, his wife, he repeated. They're nothing more than citizens now, aren't they? With no more power at their disposal than you or I. Not that they had any power in the first place. The empire belongs to the lawmakers now. And who are the lawmakers? Not Lamage, that's for sure. He only lasted 3 days. 3 days! The so-called greatest legal mind in the country, or what's left of it, and he resigns. Just walks away from everything. He was there in Paris for the talks. Did you know that? He's the reason we were able to keep as much as we did. He insisted on separate negotiations from Germany. He signed at Saint-Germain-en-Laye. They wanted to give everything to the Serbs, Slovaks, Croats, Magyars. The Allies did. All those minorities with countries of their own. Can you imagine what that would have done? It would have been total chaos. They hate each other more than they hated the empire. How do you know all of this? I was in Paris convalescing. And you never sent word? Didn't see a need to. You didn't see a need? My God, man, what about your son? We all thought you were dead. I might as well be, now that he's gone. What do you mean by that? What can I do? Look at me. One eye, half a hand. Who's going to hire me? Besides, I've never worked a day in my life. That's one thing the war taught us, that as a class, there's not a lot we can do. Novak looked at the small kitchen with its peeling paint and scuffed hardwood floor. Baltazzi watched him taking it all in and told himself it would have never looked like this 10 years ago. Then again, 10 years ago, he would have never moved into the coach house. Schill, his one-time major domo, would have never accepted how things had come about. The man should be turning over in his grave if he's doing anything, Baltazzi thought. And who would blame him, really? The once proud house and household were both a thing of the past. Whatever wealth he may have had was gone now. The new republic had seen to that, hadn't they? What can you do? Baltazzi asked slowly, squinting into the half-light. You can help rebuild the country. That's what you can do. Rebuild it? How? The war's over, and we lost. We lost everything. All that's left now is in the hands of lawyers and ex-ministers of the old Habsburg regime. Yes, international lawyers, men like Lamage. Who do you think negotiated the peace for us? We might not have been as much to blame as the Kaiser and his Prussian generals, but we were just as guilty, probably more, when you think how Ferdinand and Sophie were heir to the empire. It's foolish to think that laws can civilize the conduct of war, but that's exactly what they're thinking will happen with this new League of Nations. Bureaucrats and ex-ministers have taken the place of aristos. There's no place left for me to go, except maybe Berlin. Berlin? What's in Berlin for you? A new life? A new beginning? And there you go. That's the end of it. I hope I did okay. I know I stumbled. It's like, and I had to do another line, but you know, it's 20 minutes into this thing, so I don't want to have to start it all over again because, well, I got to make dinner. The wife's coming home soon. Got to have a hot meal on. Got to have a hot meal on the plate. I'm looking at the camera now. I was looking at the picture. I'm not doing that. Just gonna focus. So, anyways, I wanted JOHN Lithgow. Last week, I wanted Emily Blunt. I love her voice. I just pick people whose voices I like, and I want them to read for me. I do. It's like, so if you know somebody, if you're familiar with someone, if it's like, not that they're a relative or anything like that, but, pass the word on. They can make a little video. They can email it to me, and I'll put it up. And I'll introduce it, put it up. I don't know how I'll do that. That's something. I'll figure it out somehow, because I don't really know how to do this. And then you can listen to whomever it is. Like even Stephen Fry would be a great one. Awesome. Love his voice too. I just love the English voices, whatever. Anyways, we're not pushing. We have to go down the list. My list. Because I'm silly. Anyways, I don't have a lot to say because, I don't know what I'm doing half the time. I know that I'm going to tie this to my Substack pages so that when you look at this, you can look at my Substack, you can read my stories, and I have a lot of stories now. They're novellas and novelettes. Everything that I write is long. This one is 70,000 words, 71,000, which is a lot. That's 170 pages or whatever, but that's okay. A chapter a week. That's all it is. It's 10 chapters and an epilogue. 11, 12 weeks. Don't forget I had a prologue. And so then after that, then I'm going to have a guest reader, a surprise. And then after that, I'm going to be introducing my new story, and it's going to be tied into my Substack page. And they'll both coincide with each other. And it's a wonderful story, actually. It's different. Because you have to write things that are outside your comfort zone. That's what I think. It's like, you write something in a female voice. You write something where the narrative is like a threefold narrative, where, you got somebody who's telling the story to somebody else about somebody else. Like, kind of cool. And then, yeah. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I promise eventually that this will become something a bit more substantial. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and read other books because I can't do that unless they're from the, the public domain. I can't play music any longer than, about 40 seconds or whatever because, otherwise I have to pay royalties. I can't do that. I can't afford it. Maybe if I can get my BookTube channel going and I can get some advertising and shit like that stuff. Sorry, I swore. Didn't mean it. Stuff like that. Maybe I can make some money. I doubt it. I got 88 followers here so far. I have 5 subscribers. Please, if you see this, subscribe to me. Let me know you're there. Leave a comment. Leave comments. Tell me how I'm reading. Tell me if I sound okay. Is there a monotone? Is there not enough connection with the camera? Because I'm not looking at the very often, am I? But I have to read it from the page here. The page is over there. The camera's over there. The camera's up there. All of that stuff. So yeah, and now I'm thinking of dinner. I was gonna make pasta, but no, I don't think so. I think I'm just gonna make a salad, just a salad, because I gotta lose weight. Because we're gonna go to Europe. Did I say that? We're going to Europe. We're leaving for holidays. We're gonna go to Europe, 3 or 4 weeks. Haven't figured it all out yet. Looking forward to it. Leaving Vancouver, going to Amsterdam. Maybe take the train after we visit with the family for a week. Take the train and go to Brussels and go to maybe go north. Maybe go up towards Berlin and just I have a couple of cousins that have boats, and more than anything, I would love to do a tour on the of the Rhine and just go down there and check out all the castles and all of that stuff like that. That would be cool. Spend the night in the fancy little places, because I don't think that the wife wants to really sleep on the boat. She's not as outdoorsy as I am. She's like, well, let's put it this way. If there was a zombie apocalypse, she'd be one of the first to go. And she knows this. She even says this. She's well aware of it. Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. I'll catch you next week. As I say on the other channel, same bat time, same bat channel. And have a good day. and I'll catch you later. Oh, I gotta find the turn the off button there.